If you're not doing this professional development activity, you're falling behind in your career. I'm Greg. I'm the introverted networker. Today, I want to talk to you about a professional development activity you're not doing and how it's impacting your career success. That professional development activity is internal networking. Surprise, surprise. It's going to be something related to networking. Of course it is, because that's what I talk about. And I honestly believe that if you learn how to effectively network inside of your organization in the job that you already have, you are going to set your career on a trajectory for things that you've never thought possible. I've seen it happen personally. I've had people tell me it worked. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it here at the end of the episode. But the reason why I'm talking about this today is I recently had coffee with a former coworker. This is somebody I worked with 6 years ago. This person told me in this coffee that I changed her career. And of course, being the praise deflecting dolt that I am, I said, of course, I don't think, I think you're overstating it. I think you would have figured it out. You probably would have come to these conclusions on your own. And she said, no, you shouldn't minimize the advice that you gave me 6 years ago, because it changed where I ended up in terms of the work I'm doing, where I'm doing it, who I'm doing it with. And it's something that I have talked about in the past. In fact, I talked about internal networking back in issue 54 of the newsletter. We're on issue 117 now. So it's been, a year plus since I talked about this. And I thought it would be a good time to talk about this again. Also, because I've been doing a lot of talking about networking within organizations and why it's in the best interest of the employers and employees to learn how to network, not necessarily to go find a new job, but how to navigate the organization better. So if you're somebody who's out there and you're looking for a job now, this is still important, because once you land that next job, this is going to be important for you for your future success. If you're somebody who's already in a job and you're maybe listening to this because you're thinking, hey, I need to go look somewhere else, think about this as an alternative, maybe a way that you can reconnect with your organization through making some professional connections. You might be feeling like you don't know anybody, or you're feeling like, hey, I don't really know how to navigate this organization, or I don't know who's important. I don't get to talk to anybody who could help me out. I don't have anybody who's helping mentor me or develop my career. This simple tactic, this simple technique can help you with that and potentially solve a lot of those issues. I'm a big believer in the idea that if we build better professional relationships within our organizations, we can increase our employees' engagement and retention. I believe we can increase our organization's innovation and collaboration. And those are things that lead to bottom line results. Those improve speed of decision making, speed to market, speed of process and systems, and ultimately drive more revenue, decrease costs, increase profit for an organization. And a lot of people will look at me and be like, I don't understand how you think that people talking to each other and developing relationships would do that. But it all comes down to trust. And an organization that trusts each other, has people in it that trust each other, is going to move more quickly and be much more effective. It's going back to, again, The Speed of Trust, which is a book by Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His son wrote The Speed of Trust. And in that, he talks about the fact that in organizations where trust is high, speed is high and costs are low. Where trust is low, speed is low and costs are high. And so that equation, that simple way of thinking about it, drives you to want to increase trust. Well, what increased trust? Trust is increased by talking to people and getting to know them and building relationships. That's what networking is. Networking only works when people trust each other. And when people trust each other, they're willing to help each other. When they're willing to help each other, they all benefit. Same concept, whether you're looking for a job or you're in a career or you're not even looking to get promoted, but just even if you're happy in the job you have, building trust within your organization is going to make you more effective, going to make your colleagues more effective, going to make your company more effective. Let's talk about some whys that you, besides what I just said, but you personally as an individual, why you would want to grow your network within a company. Because you may be sitting there thinking, I'm just going to do the job they asked me to do. I'm going to do it really well. My boss is going to recognize that, and I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to get raises. I'm going to get bonuses. Let me dispel that myth. Yes, if you do a really good job, you probably will get recognized, but there is no guarantee. You may not get recognized for promotions. You may not get recognized for raises, for bonuses, all those things. And I can tell you that from experience because I've worked in lots of organizations, large organizations, anywhere from, organizations that had like a couple thousand people to 450,000 people. The last company I worked at was that larger one. It was a Fortune 4. Okay. The fourth largest company in the United States, according to Fortune. In that organization, when it came down to what your ratings were going to be, what your bonuses were going to be, what your merit was going to be, who was going to get promoted, there was a lot of discussion of not just with my boss, but my boss's boss and my boss's colleagues. And as a VP in that organization, I would also get together with my leaders and we would go through our whole teams. And if you were we had to figure out who was going to get the highest ratings and then the next highest and then the meets expectation ratings. And those ratings drove what you got compensation wise. My boss could talk about me all she wanted and how awesome I was. But if her colleagues didn't see it and didn't know it, then it was going to be really hard for her to advocate for a high rating for me. And the same thing happened for my team. So within organizations, and maybe your organization has this, maybe they don't, but there may be a formal process where if other leaders don't know who you are, it's going to impact your opportunities. So that's just in terms of pure compensation and promotions and things like that. But I would say also, if other people you work with don't really know who you are, when it comes time to talk about talent and other opportunities, your name's not going to get thrown out. And let's go back to this idea of recognition, because I was one of those people that 12 years ago, I was working in an organization. I thought my results would speak for themselves because for the first 9 years of my career at that company, I had started out as an independent contractor and I got a job at this company and I worked my way up. I got promoted steadily all the way up to VP, one step below the head of HR. And that was just doing good work. But what happened is when there were some changes in the organization, there was I wasn't one of the people that everybody looked at and said, we really value that person. Not that I wasn't doing a good job, because I was. But I've seen this also is if you just put your head down and you don't promote yourself, then you're not going to get recognized. And if you're an introvert like me, promoting yourself is really hard. So what's an alternative? An alternative is to get to know people, to build relationships so that you can talk to them about what you're working on and they can see what you're doing and they start to know, oh, Greg's the guy who does this for us. Greg's the guy who figures these things out. He's the one who gives me this information. I really value Greg. Now I know what Greg does. I just knew Greg's name, but now I know what he does. So getting recognition with your org can be accomplished without standing up in front of everybody and sort of tooting your own horn, which I hate. I'll never do that. But if I meet people and I talk to them about what I'm doing without sort of bragging, then they know. So whether it's self-promotion or recognition, you should be networking internally in order to make sure that other people in the organization know what you do. And then the second one is, again, opportunities. If people know who you are and what you do for the work you do, when opportunities open up, you're going to be the person whose name is at the top of their mind. And in anything with networking, you always want your name to be on the top of everybody's mind. And it doesn't have to be through self-promotion or marketing or branding or anything like that. It's just because you've had conversations with people, you've talked to them, you've told them what you do. Again, you're not bragging, you're not promoting yourself. It's just a normal conversation where this is coming up because you asked other people, hey, what do you do? And it helps you find out what other people do. And if you're the person that's gone around and met everybody in the organization and they understand who you are and how you help them, they're going to tell their bosses, hey, Greg is great. I work with Greg. I love working with Greg. He's awesome. And those bosses, you're going to get a reputation. Again, I said it's not really about branding, but it kind of is. If you go out and have conversations and meet people and you're helpful to people in your organization, Your brand is going to be one that people say, he's helpful, he's good to work with, I enjoy talking to him, I know I can be straight with him, I trust him. That's the key. You want people in the organization to learn to trust you. And trust comes from interaction. If you're just going to go sit in your team and sit within your team and work with them, great. They'll trust you. That's awesome. You should be doing that no matter what. You're going to work with your boss and you're going to show your boss how good you can do. Great. Your boss is going to trust you. You should be doing that. That's the minimum. But that's not going to get you the opportunities and the recognition you need within your organization. What is going to is you starting to build relationships with leaders of not necessarily the company, but leaders of departments, leaders of teams. This doesn't have to be you meeting with a CEO. In fact, I would recommend you don't. I would recommend you meet with other people. But let's go back to what started this. And this is this individual who got together with me and said I changed her career because of some advice I gave her. What did I tell her? I gave her some really simple advice, and I told her this is a professional development activity that everybody should be doing that most people aren't doing. So A, if you do it, you're going to stand out. B, you're going to meet people, they're going to develop relationships, and they're going to trust you. C, that's going to translate into opportunities as it did in the case of this person. And it wasn't necessarily in the company we were in, but one of the leaders she built a relationship with went to a different company. And when it came time to put people on his team, he reached out to her, brought her on, and now she's doing all kinds of work that she never thought she'd be able to do. That's how it helped her. So what did I tell her to do? Really simple. And you're going to sit here and probably think that's not going to work. But if you try it and you stay consistent and you give it a real shot, I can tell you this is going to help your career. The first thing you need to do is pick out 3 to 5 people. I would say they should be leaders, but they don't have to be leaders of the organization. They be leaders of teams again. But 3 to 5 leaders, probably people who are maybe a little farther along in their career than you are. And you're going to send them an email. And that email is going to say, hey, whatever the person's name is, or you don't have to say, hey, you can say whatever you want. I'm doing this is exactly what you should say or write. Something of this. I mean, it doesn't have to be word for word, but this is the gist. I'm doing a professional development activity. And I'm asking leaders in the company one question. I'm wondering if I can get 15 minutes of your time to ask you that question and hear what you have to say. Let me know the best way to set that up and just send them that. Okay. If you get a leader who doesn't respond, take them off your list. Forget it. Don't waste your time. Okay. Don't chase them. Probably most of them are going to be intrigued. Number one, nobody sends them emails like this. They're more like, I need this, or you have to do this or make this decision. This is a different email. It's going to stand out. 2, they're going to wonder, what's the one question? Now, you're not going to tell them the question in the email. You got to have them wondering what it is. And they might email you back and say, like, I don't have time. Could you just email it to me? And you can decide if you want to do that or not. I would propose that you try to have these conversations in person. They're likely going to say, set up time with my assistant or set up time on my calendar or however it works in your company. So find 15 minutes, set it up for 15 minutes, do it soon. When time comes, you're going to go to that person either on the phone or via video, or you're going to go to their office, you're going to go to a conference room and you're going to talk to this person, right? Again, this shouldn't be over text. It shouldn't be over email. It should be in person. You're going to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. Great to meet you. I don't think we've talked, but I'm asking people this one question. I would really love your point of view on it. And the one question that you're going to ask is, what's the one thing that you think has contributed the most to your career success so far? That's the question. And then you're going to shut up and listen. And they might hem and haw and be like, wow, I haven't thought of this. And it's fine. Just let them ponder for a minute. They might babble on. They might have all sorts of stuff. It doesn't really matter what they say. I mean, you can gain some good insight. I remember when I did this the first time, it was fascinating to me what people said. But you're not really going to do a lot with what they say. The point isn't to get some nugget of insight that you've never heard before. Again, if you do, great. And if they give you advice, use it, report back to them on how it went. But you're going to listen. You're going to let them talk. And as they talk, let them go. And you're ultimately, if you have clarifying questions you want to ask, like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more about that. Or you said this and this and this, tell me more about that. Be sort of facilitating the conversation to keep it going. I think a couple things will happen. Number one, you might get some insight. If you do, great. If you don't. Number two, you'll probably go past 15 minutes. So don't book yourself for something on the end of 15 minutes. Leave it open. If they run out of time and they need to move on, great. That's fine. No problem. But they're probably going to talk for about 30 minutes. And then as they're talking, they're going to start thinking, who's this interesting person across from me that asked me this question? Nobody ever asked me this. And they're going to start asking you about yourself. They're going to say, what do you do? What's your role here? What are you working on? What do you want to do in your career? Those kind of things. And again, you don't have to, I would think about those questions I just gave you, but think about what you want to say. And really, you're just kind of trying to develop a relationship here. And so wherever this conversation goes, there might be something where they say, hey, like, let me know what you're working on, or keep me up to date on that project you're working on, or whatever. And make sure you do. But thank them for their time. Tell them that was great. And then, now you've made contact with this person, you know them, you might see them again in meetings, feel free to talk to them. You don't have to bring up what you talked about. I wouldn't. You don't have to share with anybody else what you talked about with this person. I wouldn't. They might ask you something like, who else have you talked to? And if you feel comfortable, you can say, but again, don't share what the other people said, because that's going to give them more trust. Like if you won't share what other people said, they're going to think, oh, they're not going to share what I said. And they're going to start to trust you. These are all little things that are just about having a conversation, so that next time you see that person, you can start to have an even deeper conversation. You can give them updates on what you're working on if they ask. You can tell them how it's going. And over time, if you continue to have conversations with them, and again, don't be unnatural about it, but don't be weird, don't be too frequent. You don't have to follow up with them every week, but manage those relationships and develop those, because now you're going to stand out in their mind as somebody who works there. They're going to see you. They're going to know your name. They're going to be in meetings. They're going to hear your name. They're going to put your face to a name, and they're going to remember the conversation you had. And then they're going to be like, this is a really interesting person in our organization. Maybe I should get to know them more. That's exactly what I told my friend to do. And she did. And she told me she was really scared about doing it because she didn't think anybody would respond. She didn't think they would set up time, and they all did. And she had great conversations with them. She fostered those relationships. And as I said, one of those leaders went to a new company, and he reached out and pulled her over to that company, gave her a great opportunity to work in a place in an area she didn't think she would get to work in. And really, the other thing is she overcame this sort of fear of reaching out to people and developing these relationships. And now she does it all the time. And she's like, I used to not even like to order coffee. I used to have my friends order my coffee for me because I had such anxiety about talking to the barista. Now she's like, I reach out to people all the time. I talk to people all the time. A lot of it's sort of online and virtual forums, and, but then she goes to conferences. And so this kind of exercise in putting yourself out there and taking this chance in a really small way that could really benefit your career is really good about helping you get more comfortable talking to other people. But for sake of your career and your company, I think if you go out and you try this with 3 to 5 people, and if it works good, keep doing it, keep going, man. And if you're the person who gets known as the person who talks to people about what they think, what will make them successful, you'll create a brand for yourself. That way, when it comes to those conversations about who our top performers are and who should get the opportunities and who gets the bigger bonus and who gets the bigger raise, your name comes up. And those opportunities come. You are no longer unknown, and those leaders know you, and they're going to tap you for other opportunities. Now, I just told you that as an individual, but what would happen if your company sort of fostered that and encouraged everybody to do that? How much more trust do you think there would be in the company if more people went and had those sort of conversations that were not about work, but were about people and themselves and getting to know them? How much more would people trust each other? How much faster would they be able to make decisions together if they already had those conversations? I believe that it would increase the trust and the speed within companies immensely. And I think people would like working together better. I think they'd feel more psychological safety. They'd feel that they could bring concerns forward and talk to the leaders, and that they would want to stay with that company because they like the culture and the atmosphere. Those are my opinions. That's what I think about it. That's what I'm working on and trying to get out in the world, because to me, it's important. All these things are things I've done myself. And all these things have worked really well, not just for me, but for other people. So I'm sharing them with you. I hope that you give it a shot. If you do, let me know, and let me know how it went. If it doesn't go well, tell me. Let's strategize and figure out a way to make it go better. If it does go well, I'd love to hear your success stories. But go out there this week in your company, reach out to one of these leaders or somebody that you really admire, ask them these questions, have these conversations. Let me know how it goes. Go out there, meet some interesting people. Remember, always be connecting.